We love getting to meet you. Today we have our usual agenda. Julia's going to start us off with what's new with ADK this month, just dropping some new launches and things you can get your hands on. Then we'll move into George. He's going to present to us how we're accelerating PR and issue resolution for ADK using some automation. So hopefully getting your PRs merged a lot more quickly lately. And then we're going to move into deep dive with Heron on Managed Agent and Antigravity with ADK. He's going to get into some demos. He's got samples for you to try. So we're really excited for you to get hands-on with us. And then Alan's hosting Mark and Tyler from CopilotKit today, looking at an ADK integration there. So super excited. We'll have time for question and answer at the end of the call as usual. If you have questions during the call, you can drop them in the chat or use the QA tool that's available there. We'll also be dropping some polls about halfway through the call today. So yeah, we're ready to get going. I'm just gonna call out a few folks who've dropped us a chat. So Yves, Atai, George, Carlos, Emmanuel, folks calling in from all over, the Bronx, New York, Sao Paulo, India. Thanks everyone. A lot of you are staying up late or waking up super early to be here with us live. So like, we really appreciate you all. And yeah, we're really excited to meet you. So I'm gonna hand it over to Julia to present what's new. Julia, go ahead.
Thank you, Katie. It's a pleasure to be back, and thank you everyone for jumping in. I know this was a shift from last week, and so appreciate everyone coming to join us and to learn a little bit more about what we've been up to in the last couple of weeks and months. So couple of new updates, actually two really big new updates from July since we last talked in June. The first one is not only do we have an ADK 2.0 live for Python, Go is also live, which is super exciting for me in particular because we have a lot of traction that we're starting to see around Go. A lot of customers using it in production, not just customers, but a lot of developers kind of flocking towards Go. And really exciting for us because we work very closely with the Go language team as well as with the MCP and the A2A teams. So kind of being able to bring all of these pieces together for you guys and really provide you kind of a cohesive community in Go is really, really exciting for us. With 2.0, what we really enabled is the workflow side, right? Everyone knows this from the Python perspective, but at the end of the day, our goal was to let you use kind of anything that you want to enable a business process or a workflow that you're trying to achieve, whether that's building an agent or whether that's actually using a model, an agent, or a human within a workflow. And that's really where Go, we've seen a lot of customers use, as I said, for production. I did have, I think, the link here on how to use it. It functions very, very similar, as I said, to the Python side, except for very much aligned to the Go language and the Go framework. So really excited about this one. Would love for you all to test it out and share more about your thoughts and what's working and what isn't. With that, we can go to the next one too, Katie. And the second thing that I'm really excited about, for those of you that haven't played with Agents CLI yet, Agents CLI was a passion project from my perspective. I was super frustrated that I could not get all the MCP servers and blah, blah, blah working in order to kind of really easily get this set up within whatever coding agent I was operating in to build on top of the ADK as well as kind of our broader agent platform and take care of the software development lifecycle, or the agent development lifecycle is what I've started to call it. And we recently, so we launched this a couple months ago, and it's now also GA. There's a couple of highlights that I love. As I said, accessible within any coding agent that you use, whether that's Claude Code, Antigravity, Codex, whatever you're kind of using, whatever system you're using, you can pass in both the CLI as well as the skills in order for you to be able to have full access to the Gemini Enterprise Agent platform as well as the ADK and build your agents on top of the structure. The really exciting piece for me, and the team has been iterating on this a lot, is the first class automation of the automated evals that are coming through this. So we're really trying to shape this into a broader evaluation, like a broader agent development lifecycle narrative, not just kind of like the building portion, but helping you evaluate, optimize your agents as you start to bring them to life. Because as someone that manages quite a few agents for my daily work, this is something that I run into on a consistent basis. So that really is kind of a lot of the things that we're thinking about here. We've seen a ton of community love on this, skills installs, GitHub stars, etc. So please do go test it out and check out the docs as well, and give it a shot and give us feedback as well. We love to hear it, whether here on the call or in other formats, or ping me on LinkedIn. Always love to hear more. And we've got a lot of folks from our developer community that are really active on Agents CLI as well. So with that, Katie, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thanks, Julia. And I think Alan asked a question, which is, who hasn't played with the CLI yet? If you haven't, please go check it out here, get started, let us know what you think. And yeah, thanks. A few other folks in the chat here. Nicholas from London, a big ADK Go fan. So the updates on ADK Go today will be exciting for you. Willington from New York, Victoria from Chicago, Claret from Nigeria. Thanks everyone for joining. Leslie from Bolivia. Awesome. Love having a global call, you guys. This is so fun. I'm going to move ahead now and introduce you to George, an ADK engineer. George, go ahead.
Hi. Can you hear me?
There's some echo. Okay.
All right. Sorry, we're sitting next to each other. Yeah. Hi, I'm George. I'm going to talk about ADK and automation of PRs and issues and how we're doing on our side to communicate to you guys. So for the sort of past 2 months, we've been using a lot of ADK automation to sort of merge more code, close more issues, and we're seeing like we're resolving more issues and merging more code than is being created now with some new automation that we've created. Next slide. So we have some more automation that sort of brings your issues and your PRs in. It reads, triages your issues. We have ADK owners and maintainers that will make sure that it's built and tested correctly, and then we will get back to you with a review. Or if it's just great, we will sort of end-to-end bring it in. Our automations, which I'll explain sort of later, remove sort of waiting, but we still have ADK engineers that are looking at all of your issues and PRs. Next slide. So we're automating, like bringing in the diff, building it, running the tests, CI/CD, triage, tracking across the different repos, but we still put it in front of the engineers. Is this the right change? Does this design make sense? And it's just letting us have like our own approval be through the gate. So we're able to land much more code that you guys submit. So we actually are using ADK to sort of do all of our automation. We use workflow as the whole pipeline. We have output schema. We use ADK memory, we use sessions, callback, and plugins. And so all the things that you guys are using, we are using as well to automate how we are dealing with incoming issues and PRs. The next slide. So how it kind of works is that we have an ADK workflow graph that fetches, preps the data, and then we have an anti-gravity coding agent that sort of reviews over the code. We have another critique LM agent, and then we gate and upload. This has been great because we have like durable sessions, and we can like survive restarts, and all the things that you guys are building with as well. We are using the same. So I think the big takeaway from this is that just keep PRs and issues coming. I think 84 of you have landed code in ADK since June, and we have the capacity to do more. The bottleneck was previously to the engineering bandwidth. And now that we've sort of spent a lot of time trying to streamline that whole process, we can just get back to you faster and get more of your code merged and solve more of your issues. So filing an issue, opening a PR, it will get read, it will get an owner, and it will get an answer, or it'll just get merged in. So yeah, please keep issues coming, and excited to see more from the community.
Nice. Love seeing all these contributions to ADK from our community. So thank you all for your contributions. Please hop in, give us more. We have bandwidth now. Alan, go ahead.
George, just to confirm, that's across languages?
Currently, this is just being dogfooded within ADK Python, but there's plans to sort of grow to all.
Challenging question, I know. I think that's a good angle for PR contributions, right? helping to attain feature parity idiomatic to each language. So I hope that we can open that door too.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah, like I think Pankaj added a question. When does graph support come to Kotlin? So yeah, that's pretty cool. Kotlin's popular. Just looking through the chat, we have Isaac in Colombia. We have Josephat in Kenya. Purandiswar in India. Krishna in India. And Alphonse in Spain. Thanks for joining. Now I'm going to hand it over to Haran. Haran's going to get to ADK in action with demos, samples. Take it away, Haran.
Hey, everyone. Can you go to the next slide? Hey, everyone. Today, I'm actually going to be talking about the Managed Agent and Antigravity within ADK. Can you go to the next slide? So Managed Agent is a new Google Cloud and AI Studio offering where you basically can access the Antigravity agent via API. So you get a very powerful out-of-the-box agent out of the box without any configuration. Can you go to the next slide? Now this managed agent has access to its own sandbox, so it can execute code. It can use the internet. It can reason, plan. So basically, whatever you can do with Antigravity, you can do through this API. And within ADK is just another agent. And by using this within ADK, you get access to all of the other. You get access to the ecosystem around it. So all the tools, plugins, evaluation suite, deployments. So it works out of the box within the ADK ecosystem. Can you go to the next one? So now that you have managed agent, you might be wondering when to use what. So there are pros and cons to using a managed agent and building your own agent. A managed agent, you get a lot of power with very little code. So it has its own sandbox, so you don't have to worry about writing your own sandboxing code or making sure they're executed safely, etc. So you get a very powerful agent with very little code. Whereas if you build it yourself, you have more control and more flexibility in how that's deployed and used, but you have to implement it all. You have to implement it yourself. So these are pros and cons, and one size doesn't fit all. You go to the next slide. So now with the managed agent, we have these primitives: the managed agent harness, the LLM agent, and then workflows. So each of them have their own pros and cons, and you need to pick the right tool for the job you need. If you need more determinism, wherein we'll go over examples later, but if you need more determinism, you would want to use ADK workflows. So therefore, what the agent can do is very constrained. Whereas if you need a lot of flexibility and power, you would go the other direction and use a managed agent. So it can, it has a lot more power, but at the cost of not being as deterministic. So since managed agent is just another agent in the ADK ecosystem, you don't have to just pick one primitive. You can use managed agent inside other existing workflows. For example, you can have a workflow that orchestrates LLM agent and managed agent, or you could have an agent that LLM agent that orchestrates the managed agent or workflow. So there are many ways to use the tools we have in ADK. So here's an example. So let's say you have a ticket triage product in your company. So a customer files a support ticket, and you use ADK to triage this ticket. Now you want to build a new feature wherein you want once the ticket comes in, you actually just want a prototype PR to be created. Now there are two. You can build this yourself. So you can use ADK LLM agent and implement this coding component of this workflow yourself. So you'd have you have to like implement a code sandbox, the runtimes around it, and ensure it doesn't break things in your environment. Or you could use Managed Agent to add this feature. Now, the pros and cons of this are when you build it yourself, you have more flexibility, but you would need to spend more time trying to build this feature. Whereas with Managed Agent, you can get this up and running much faster. And it's not a decision that you have to stick to. You can start with Managed Agent as a way to quickly get this feature out. And when you realize you need more control or you need more flexibility in how it works, you can swap it out for the LLM agent or some other or something else of your own implementation. Next slide. So here's a demo where the same agent is built twice. One in, if you can display it. So the left side is this is a code. This is an agent that can run code and just execute code. It's a very simple agent. And I implemented it in both the LLM agent as well as the Managed Agent. You can see the comparison left and right. So there are pros and cons.
So Harun, which side is the Managed Agent?
Oh, the right side is the Managed Agent and the left side is the LLM agent.
Okay.
So firstly, so in the left side, the LLM agent runs and executes the code in your local environment, whereas the Managed Agent executes the code in the remote environment. So there are many pros and cons, and for example, you can see the LLM agent version was much faster because it's executing in your environment, and the model, the brain powering this LLM agent is just a model, so it's very primitive, very simple tool call. So it's able to get the job done faster, whereas the Managed Agent is the full anti-gravity harness, so it takes more time, does more things. So I would recommend you, for your use case, like try both ways and pick the one that suits for you. I have this demo. I'll just drop the link in the chat. And then I'll also drop the docs for managers in the chat. Yeah, so that's anyway, the next slide. So what I talked about so far is the Managed Agent API. So that is a way to access Antigravity via an API. So it's running on Google Cloud or like in Architect. It's not, you don't have control over it. Next, we're trying to integrate the Antigravity local harness, the Antigravity SDK within ADK itself. Currently, it's in labs. It has limited feature set, but we are actively working on this, and also we're also actively working on maybe building all the features you need to build your own harness on top of ADK. So if you have any thoughts or ideas or how you'd like to see this integration pan out, please let us know, and we'll incorporate that into our design. Somebody has a question. Should I?
Yeah, actually, there were a couple of questions, Harun, for you. So one of them was, can you show the underlying ADK code for each LLM versus Managed Agent? Not sure if you can do that.
Oh, yes. I just shared the GitHub repo that has the code. So yeah, please take a look. It's on the chat. Yeah.
And Natisha, is it going to be the go-to for long-running agents? When should we decide to use anti-gravity versus agent runtime?
So the answer is it depends. So the pros and cons. Firstly, the pro is that you get a very powerful agent out of the box with very less code, and you don't have to worry about the infrastructure around sandboxing and code execution environments. But the cost is that it doesn't have any flexibility. For example, you cannot have you cannot have your own tool calls. You cannot have your custom tools. It's limited by the tools it comes with. So you would So I think the short answer would be, if your use case fits into whatever the anti-gravity, the managed agent currently supports, then that's a good option. But if you need more flexibility, then you would need to build it yourself. And also, this is a decision you can start with. Since it's well integrated into the ADK ecosystem, you can start with the managed agent route and then move to building your own when you do need more control. How is this harness different from OmniGent? Sorry, I'm not familiar with OmniGent. But
Omni Agent. It's a meta harness around different harnesses. I actually just answered that one. It's a little closer to Scion than it is this. But
oh, I see. Okay.
yeah, to reiterate what you were just saying, I think ADK allows you to build your own production grade application, your own production grade agent harness, your own production grade agent, your own Omni agent, if you would like to build your own Omni agent. But it's not Omni agent out of the box.
I think I saw Ronaldo's question. Can you deploy a managed agent or a multi-agent system that contains a managed agent to agent engine as well? Yes, you can. There are some considerations regarding region. Like, for example, managed agent is currently only available on the global region. And if you deploy it in a specific Google Cloud region, then you need to take those into consideration. But from an ADK point of view, it is a fully integrated into the ADK ecosystem, so you can deploy them just like any other agent. Yeah. And Richard asked, what's the intention with respect to sessions, memory bank, etc.? So that's an interesting point. So the managed agent, since it's managed, has its own sessions that is controlled by the API, which is where the flexibility part comes in. So the ADK, since ADK is wrapping it, ADK only does read access to the managed agent. So it cannot work. You cannot mutate the session via ADK. So if controlling your own sessions or memory is something you need, then you would need to build it yourself, and it would not work. You won't have the flexibility to mutate those within the managed agent, if that makes sense. How much visibility is provided into the tools, connectors, etc.? And is there a live event streaming? So I'm not sure what I'm reading George's question. His question is, how much visibility is provided into the tools, connectors, etc., available to the managed agent? And is there
I think not a lot. The goals of managed agent is that you don't have to do anything yourself. You just have an API, you configure it, it's running. If you want to control things yourself, you're a little bit more in the driver's seat, but you have to do a little bit more work. Things like the Agents CLI take a lot of that work off your plate, but these are design choices that you have to make. There is a future where interesting things are going to keep happening, and managed agents will continue to have feature growth and perhaps greater interoperability with perhaps greater insight into the inner workings. I don't know that that's going to happen or not, but those types of things are being discussed. As of right now, it is a pretty closed black box. What you get for it is you don't have to do anything. It just works.
Yeah, and to add to Alan's point, you do know the list of tools that are provided, but you don't know how those tools will work. And the interfaces of those tools may change. So today they might have certain features, tomorrow they might have some other features that it's not planned to have those customizable. And to your second question, which is there a live event streaming endpoint? Yeah, Managed Agent is streaming first. So in the reference implementation I sent on the chat, it is streaming enabled. So yeah, like that would work. But how, like, different backends have different like intricacies. For example, the Google Cloud version, although technically supports streaming, only streams the final output and doesn't stream the intermediate tool calls, whereas the AI Studio version streams the intermediate tool calls as well. I've added this in the limitation section of the doc. So depending on what backend you're using, it's best to test it and see what works. Harsh has a question. I deployed an LLM agent workflow to Agent Engine. Could you file an issue on GitHub and we'll get to it?
I think there's a couple more. One from Usman. Does it support multi-agent tool workflow in the background?
I'm not sure what you mean by in the background. Maybe could you clarify your? But it does support a multi-agent system, so you can have managed agent as a node in a multi-agent system. The managed agent cannot be the planner because it doesn't support client-side tool calling. So you cannot have the managed agent as a, like, let's say the orchestrator and have like have it orchestrate LLM agents and workflows. But what you can do is have the managed agent as a sub-agent in a multi-agent system. You can pass your MCPs and skills configuration. So you can pass your skills and MCPs to the managed agent. Yes, you can.
I think Alan
That's
dropped a couple of links.
That sounds good, but how to see the logs? I'm not sure what you mean by logs here. If you want the logs of the managed agent itself, like what's happening in its sandbox environment or things like that, you don't get access to that. You only have access to the response of the managed agent, and then you can log it yourself, but you don't get the internal logs of the managed agent.
And I see we have some like more enterprise-y questions, which is good. I think I'm gonna hold those for the end. I think Julia might be able to return at the end of the call to kind of address some of these. I think now what we're going to do is shift gears. We have our community spotlight. Thank you, Hiren. That was awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I'm also copying some of these questions over to the Q&A panel. That makes sure that we get the record of those in case we don't address them right away. So yeah, thanks, Hiren. And that was awesome. Okay, so we have our community spotlight. I'm going to hand it over to Alan to introduce our guests today. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I warned you there'd be a lot of questions. It's an exciting topic. Thank you for making this integration. There is a lot of stuff in this space and the interplay between what you, the developer, are building and what's out on the remote. So we're going to keep working on this space, and I'm sure we'll bring you back around. CopilotKit. Honestly, many of you already know and use CopilotKit, so this is not so much an introduction as it is a way to bring a partner into the community call and talk about some of the new stuff they've built. I'm going to talk very little and hand off very soon, but I will say we've been talking to this team, I don't exactly know how long, but at least a year and a half-ish. Lots of really cool stuff that we have been doing with them on a variety of fronts, including making sure that ADK looks beautiful inside of CopilotKit. They have done amazing things. I'm a big fan, as you can tell. And I think Tyler isn't here, Sophia, you said? So, yeah. Oh, sweet, awesome. Well then, Tyler, Mark, Sophia, whoever wants to talk, I'm handing it off. Go get it.
Take it away, Mark. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Tyler. I help lead open source here at CopilotKit, and Mark has actually been doing a lot of the work on this ADK integration, so please give him a round of applause as he comes in. But Mark, take it away.
All right.
Good. So we have a demo backup, but are you going to jump over and share your screen and live demo it?
Yeah.
Sweet.
I'll do that. So you should be able to see my screen now.
Yeah, we see slides.
And just quickly, I'll jump in and introduce myself as well. I'm Sophia Sanchez. I lead our partnerships and technical ecosystems at CopilotKit. I actually used to work at Google. I was a software engineer working on the AR glasses. I got switched over to this company about 4 months ago now. So yeah, Mark will be giving some demos about how CopilotKit and AG-UI can be used with ADK. But in case you haven't heard about CopilotKit, or the agentic front-end stack, which basically means we make it as easy as possible to bring AI into UI. We're used by over half the Fortune 500 companies, and we're open source. We power millions of agent user interactions every week, and we're the creators of the AG-UI protocol, which is an open protocol, the agent user interaction protocol, which essentially standardizes events for the way that agents talk to front ends. We do have a deep partnership with Google. Thanks so much, Alan, for working with us for over a year now. We're a significant contributor to A2UI, and we actually help bring that to more users by helping connect it to any agent framework and any front end. So yeah, that's a quick overview of the company. So Mark, you can go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Sophia. Glad to be here. Yeah, as Alan mentioned, I'm lead of partnerships and integrations at CopilotKit. Been a contributor to the project for much longer than I've actually been employed by the company. But yeah, just going real quick into CopilotKit for those of you who haven't seen it before. This is kind of our soup to nuts demo. We call it Beautiful Chat. So here we've got all of our different frameworks. Of course, I'll be focusing on ADK today. So that this just gives us the ability to show a few of our capabilities. These kind of predate some of the A2UI work, but it just shows some controlled generative UI. I'll dig into the A2UI a bit more in a minute or so. I also have the ability to do some human-in-the-loop integrations. The ability to go all the way to full-blown generative UI. I like this demo because we never quite know what we're going to get. Just asking for a calculator. This time it's chosen to keep it simple. And then we also have the ability to call MCP apps. And this is all using ADK on the back end. In this case, it's chosen to draw a flowchart with unlabeled boxes. So yeah, with the full-blown generative UI, you never quite know what you're going to get. But A2UI gives us just the right amount of control, we feel. And we also have the ability to toggle the themes so it looks a bit more consistent. And we have the ability to share state between the front end and back end. So here's just a simple to-do list app. I can add a task. And then I can complete it in the chat. This just shows the front end and back end tools, and for some reason, it's choosing CopilotKit learning tasks instead of the to-do list. So I'll complete that.
And hey, Mark, I wanted to step in a little bit with the code. Do you mind if I jump in a little bit there? I have some code prepared as well.
Okay, I was going to do the A2UI, but yeah, if you want to dive in with the code, sure.
Yeah, totally. So give me just 1 second here. Can everyone see my screen? Great. Yep. I just wanted to show a little bit about, so that was a kind of quick demo of everything that we're doing, right? We also have AG-UI as a protocol. If you haven't heard of AG-UI, we'll be talking a little bit about it. It's taking events from the agents, sending them to the front end. It's kind of an agnostic layer of just JSON events that are being sent. The actual code for what you just saw here is pretty complex, but if we break it down to individual pieces, it's pretty simple. Where on the front end, we have some React code here, but what's great is we also support Angular. We also have support for Vue and a collection of other channels, which we'll be launching pretty soon. Stay tuned this week. And those channels will let you also talk in things like GChat and Slack and WhatsApp and kind of anywhere that you communicate with your agents. All of what you see here also works there. And so at a base level, if we're looking at some React code, I know that we're at Google, so maybe some Angular developers in here. It'll be some Angular bindings as well. But we just defined a Copilot chat. This is our pre-built component for chat. And basically what this does is it just gives us a really kind of nice default UI, right? So in this case, I'm connected to the ADK agent. I can ask it to write a sonnet. It replies really quickly because Flash is really fast. But then I can also fully customize this with CSS. So I get this kind of nice, fully vibe coded. I wrote this with Gemini actually, UI, which is pretty cool. And it uses CSS to customize it. But we also have headless implementation. This uses ShadCN under the hood. All of these things just work. So you have a really great deep customization. The way that that actually works is through a hook called, just gonna find it. It's called Use Agents. And Use Agent is basically our headless solution. We also have support for Vue.js. I saw some love in the chat for Vue.js. The agent itself, though, is really quite simple. I mean, this is a little bit more complex just because I want it to be a bit more interesting, but the ADK agent is pretty simple. Let's find a pretty nice one. That a couple of these are a little bit complex. Here we go. Here's a really nice one. So for the beautiful chat one, we basically just have a default ADK agents. We bind in some tools here, but you'll also know we bind in this AG-UI tool set. So one of the things that Mark was mentioning is front-end tool calling. And so front-end tool calling is where we take client-defined tools and we pass that to the agents, and the agent is able to call them. And the way that we do that is through this AG-UI tool set. Mark actually wrote all this code, so he is very well versed in all of it, but I just want to make sure that we are taking a look at it. So as we go through the rest of his demos, he's actually able to showcase more of that code, and you have like a good foundation as we're going through. So Mark, do you want to take it from there?
Sure, I'll take that back. Yeah, so I actually wanted to dig in a little bit to the A2UI code, and speaking of simplicity, it doesn't get much more simple than the integration with A2UI. So yeah, on the front end, really all you need is you're passing in the catalog and you're telling it to essentially use A2UI, and here's the catalog. Doesn't get much simpler. Just we've got the definition of the various components, and then what we need for the React front end is the renderers for all of those individual components. And then in the past you might have seen an agent where you have to essentially embed the catalog in the agent, but because we're passing that through from the front end, this is the agent. I mean, it doesn't get much more basic than that. We do tell it to use the generate A2UI tool. It's going to get passed in from the front end, but that's about it. And then once you've so when you actually see that in action, you can do something like a sales dashboard. So here I've told it a pretty simple prompt to show me a sales dashboard. It's looking at the catalog that we've given it, and we've got some really rich components in there. So this is what the agent put together using full-blown generative UI with A2UI.
Yeah, and I'll just add a little bit extra color. So earlier you heard me mention front-end tools. So front-end tools let us do a couple of things. For example, we can pass literal components on our front end to our agent. So now our agent is aware of how to use our front end, right? We can expand this to A2UI, where A2UI is defining the definitions, which are effectively the schema that the agent can generate, as well as what that schema maps to, right? And so what we see here is the agent actually generated that schema, and then they got mounted into components that we define on the front end. So from a developer's experience, they're defining all of their components and how they get composed together and what they look like on the front end that gets sent through AG-UI to ADK, and ADK is now aware of how to use A2UI without actually having to edit the A2UI agent at all.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have a few more examples in this, and this is all available on our dojo.showcase.copilotkit.ai if you want to kick the tires on this and see how we did the code for each of these demos. Yeah, I could do a full half hour just on all the demos, but yeah, for the sake of time, I see we're coming up on the quarter hour. I did want to leave a little bit of time to just show some of the resources on the CopilotKit website. So, and I've got QR codes for these at the end. Yeah, so just building with ADK with CopilotKit. We've got a great quick start guide. And yeah, looking at some of those same examples that we were just looking at in the dojo. We also have in our cookbook section, pretty sure we've got some Angular fans in the house. Angular with Google ADK. So putting Angular and ADK together inside of CopilotKit. And there's actually it's a duplicate of the same slide. So Angular and ADK just released this week, I believe, or last week. But yeah, we're getting a lot of really great feedback and uptake on that. So yeah, just to really, I'll put up the getting started QR codes here for anyone who wants to take those. So yeah, there's the basic ADK quick start if you want to use A2UI and Angular with ADK.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much. This is a good demo to bring, because it is often the case that making an agent look good and useful to a human in the seat is hard, and we don't all have the same skills for front end that you guys have. So I really appreciate your contributions. We've been tracking for a long time, and I'm glad that ADK devs show up and can easily use CopilotKit, and now from an increased variety of surfaces, not just React, now Angular, etc. There's a lot more that we could keep talking about, but I think it's probably time. Katie, where are we at on the call agenda?
Yeah, this was our final kind of section before we move into Q&A. So yeah, we have time. I mean, I know this, I've put some questions in the Q&A tool as well, so we can go back. But yeah, whatever you guys like. This is a popular topic. I saw a lot of love coming through the chat on CopilotKit. So if folks want to hop on and ask questions while we have the CopilotKit team here, please do.
Ten seconds of awkward silence gives you an opportunity.
Yeah, see, there's lots of questions in the chat as well that we're trying to answer. But yeah, thanks so much, Alan, for having us on the call.
I saw one question that I could maybe answer live, which was how do we deal with streaming through AG-UI? I posted a document in there if anyone wants to look through it, but it's worth noting. AG-UI as a protocol has this concept of deltas. So as events are kind of being generated inside of an agent, we send, for example, a text message start to indicate that the next events that follow will be streaming for that text message. And then you'll have text message content with just the delta from the last message, right? So that's all put together is how you stream something. So when you're building a message from an agent, you'll put those little pieces all together as they come through, and then they'll combine together to be one full message. And if you want to read more, there's a link inside of the chat there.
While we're here, some of the sort of like interesting backdoor stuff that doesn't always come through in the docs. I know it is confusing that we have an A2A and then an AG-UI and then an A2UI. And why do we have so many protocols? I get that question a lot. It is a struggle. They work together and do subtly different things. And we constantly try and make them work easier together. And actually, that's my secondary shout out to the CopilotKit team. You do a great job of trying to make that easier for developers and putting the pieces together. So thanks again.
One question from Steve: does CopilotKit support agents deployed in Agent Engine?
That is a perennial question. CopilotKit works fine. Agent Engine is intended to only serve the agent, not the front end. And there's constraints about what the messages are that go over the wire due to some design choices of the Agent Engine or Agent Platform Runtime. So I will still say it is difficult to get it to work right. If you're going to use CopilotKit and AG-UI, your best bet is to deploy it on Cloud Run today. And there are many feature requests to make this easier on Agent Platform Runtime. Agent Platform Runtime now supports a bring your own container, but there's still some constraints about the networking layer on top. So Again, probably more backstory than you want. The runtime is intended to be a very opinionated, just deploy an agent service where a lot of design choices are made for you. If you're already an application developer and comfortable with Cloud Run, use Cloud Run. If you're comfortable with GKE and want to run your own DevOps, use GKE. Like, these are intended to be choices to fit you where you're at, not force you down one path or another.
And Mark just dropped a demo for ADK AG-UI and Kotlin. Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Michael asked, can you talk about WebMCP? I don't know if that's an orthogonal conversation, but
It's a bit orthogonal. That's adding capabilities to your website to support a browser agent utilization of your website. We do have Google teams working on that, predominantly on the Chrome team. I can bring them to a future community call, but I don't think that they're part of this call today.
yeah. So for the rest of Q&A, now we have 10 minutes. We can take some live questions. If you want to put your hand up, we're happy to answer some questions about features and things like that. I also have a lot of questions that I copied over to the Q&A tool. I'd request the ADK team who is here, if you want to go through, open up the Q&A tool and see if there's ones we can cherry pick off here that are easier, that we can address here today. So yeah, we can approach it both ways. Whoever comes first, a hand or an answer.
I got one from Steve G. Not a hand, but it is live. He asked, is there a way to natively filter events from bubbling to the UI? So yes, AG-UI has a bunch of different SDKs. It's really a client-server protocol. So the clients are things like Slack and Teams and React, right? And then the other side are the servers, and the servers are agents, right? And so AG-UI has SDKs to nest right alongside those agents. So for example, we have an SDK around ADK agents that make it so that they export and receive AG-UI events. What's great about that is you can actually, at that server level, define, hey, I don't want these events to be received, and I also don't want these events to be sent. So like, for example, the protocol has this concept of system messages, right? Typically a security no-no, but you can actually block that at the server level so that clients can't send system messages, if that makes sense. But you can also say, like, for example, I don't want to receive any, I don't know, file uploads because it doesn't match with your agent for whatever reason. In that case, you could also block receiving file uploads from the protocol, that sort of thing.
Yeah, 17 messages, is that right, Tyler? How many, what's the total taxonomy of messages?
Yeah, it might be good to cover that. I have a nice little diagram here of all of the different events, but we recently added encrypted reasoning support, which upped it up to about 20. But if you kind of look through here, I linked this in the chat. I'll link it again here in a second. These are the events on the right-hand side. And if you notice, they're effectively just JSON objects. So if we actually look at the different SDKs that are supported, we can kind of read through, let's say, TypeScript. We can actually get a sense of what these structures actually look like. So I can look at events. You can see all of them together here in a nice little block, but you can also see what event will come through as in JSON. So like, for example, this is the base event. So everything has a timestamp, has the ability to have raw data. But there are lifecycle events. So like, what happens when a run starts? What happens when a text message starts? There's that delta that I mentioned earlier where text message content comes and is streamed. Here's those reasoning events and the encrypted reasoning events as well. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks, Tyler. So I'm going to hop over to Q&A. I'm going to start picking off questions for the ADK team. So Ray, you posted a question. How long will 1.0 ADK be upkept and worked on versus 2.0? I asked because they seem to be quite different paradigms and would take a considerable refactor to upgrade. Anything you'd recommend to mitigate risk? Wondering if ADK team can speak to this.
Yeah, this is Paul. I can talk about this. So for 1.x version, we are committed to can support it for a year. That's our commitment of our policy. But I do want to point out that if you just upgrade your ADK version from 1.x to 2.x. In most cases, we tested it'll just work. If you don't utilize the new features brought by the 2.0, the existing features from 1 to 2, there's no major differences. So they should work really well. It's just when you wanted to upgrade your architecture to take advantage of the new workflow and the new features in 2.0, you have to make some changes. But for 1.0, throughout the year, we'll make sure that we fix critical bugs, we fix all the security bugs. So it's still going to be a really stable version for you to use in the production.
Thanks, Bo. I'm looking at questions here. There's a lot of questions around language. So like Jan just asked, I see there are Go SDK definitions for AG-UI. Any official support in the near future for AG-UI and Go?
So actually, Mark can touch a little bit more on this, but we have a really active community. That active community was really hungry for a lot of SDKs kind of when we launched this protocol. It's actually how Mark came to us. He mentioned it kind of briefly. Mark was super interested in ADK, and he brought ADK to AG-UI as well as the Kotlin SDK, which we officially inherited. So now we're officially maintaining that ourselves internally as Mark has joined the company, which is fantastic. I think that, there's a lot of languages, and there's a lot of languages in the world. So like Go, for example, is not something that we're currently officially maintaining. However, I love Go, and if there are any Go developers here, I would maybe love to talk a little bit more about making them a bit more official. So reach out to me or Mark. But Mark, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I mean, we've got, it's hard to keep up with all the different languages, but I mean, Matt Sperlin from our community has been doing a lot of work. Specifically, he actually created a Go demo app that uses we have a Dart SDK, and then there's even been some Flutter demos on the front end. So yeah, it's plenty of language support across languages. There's a Java SDK, but yeah, a lot of it is really coming from the community. So yeah, we encourage people to check out the AG-UI protocol repo, AG-UI protocol/AG-UI. And just dive in if you see something that catches your interest. As Tyler mentioned, that's how I came to CopilotKit in the first place.
And on the topic of Dart, Emmanuel did ask, why don't we have an official Google ADK for Dart? It'd be awesome for Flutter projects. I think that's a good call out. Any comments on this? I know we're constantly chasing languages. But it's always good to hear directly from you, like what would be important for you. So thanks for raising this.
It has come up on the last 3 calls. I'm not sure if it's the same question asker every time.
There's got to be more than one Dart user, right, Emmanuel?
Yeah, I can tell a little bit about Dart. We do want to expand ADK to as many languages as possible. I heard about Dart and Rust, C++, and a lot of languages. However, currently our bandwidth does not allow us because we're still trying to get ADK Kotlin, Java, and TS to pass the threshold of 2.0. So team are working really hard. I do see a lot of potential to use AI to help us to kind of expand ADK. So that's something that we'll experiment.
Yeah. Mark and Tyler, do you have easily handy the matrix, the 3x3x3 matrix of all of the platforms that you test for that you can flash on the screen, or is that not like?
I can absolutely show that. It's a little bit insane and chaotic. So
yes,
not insane. It's very logical if you think it, but you're going to see this and you'll be like, whoa, holy crap.
It's well done. It's worth potentially showing.
Yeah, so this is it. Can everyone see this giant matrix? Yeah. So if we kind of like scroll through here, this shows a collection of different numbers kind of across the entire stack, right? I can just click into any demo at any point in time, and I can see the code for it as well as the demo itself kind of live. So that's actually what you were seeing just a moment ago when I was demoing. We've done this for every framework that we partner with in the ecosystem. You can see that there are like kind of some bullet points that are marked anywhere. And this is basically, hey, we need to go fix something is effectively what this means.
Could you maybe Alt plus in onto one of those just to, so they can see what kind of level of detail?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know, let's zoom in on, I don't know, what's a good one? TypeScript or actually, yeah, I mean, we can zoom in on like, I don't know, this one, and you can open it up and you can say, draw a flowchart with these simple steps or whatever, and it'll work using the same kind of demo that you saw earlier, right? In this case, it looks a little bit better just because I think we were using a better model on the lane graph implementation, but this is also what we do for ADK. And then there isn't yet the 3D matrix, right? So like if we look at this as a grid, we also support different clients, right? You heard me mention. And so we're starting to make this be a cube, actually. We call it the hyper cube because there's so much stuff that we have to maintain and look at. Most of this is actually maintained by agents. And I think you could take some pretty interesting inspiration at the ADK level, how to support this. What's nice is that you guys have a 2x2 grid. We have a 3x3, or as you said, like a cube that we have to maintain. But Angular is actually in here. It's just not a button that I can click. And so on and so forth. Also, what's interesting is this is how we generate our docs. So the code that we create for these, they all have code regions that automatically generate our docs. So we don't actually have to maintain docs every day by hand or by AI. It's actually generated into the code itself. So as we build new demos, we automatically get documentation for it.
Yeah, thanks. I know that was a bit of a weird call out, but I appreciate it. I'm a big nerd for automation, specs, testing, etc. I think you've done a good job with that.
Awesome. I think we are just one more minute. We have just one more minute, and so not enough time to go deeply into questions, but I've copied them all over, and so we'll be able to go back in and answer some of these maybe on the Git repo or the Reddit, because a lot of great questions here. So thank you all so much for joining our July call. We'll be back for our August call. We'll send out some announcements on that, but please stay engaged with us on Git, on Reddit, on LinkedIn. We love to hear from you. Love to get to meet our global community. So many folks I didn't get a chance to shout out today from all around the world building with ADK. So really appreciate you all. And we'll see you next month. Thanks, everybody. Take care.